Good morning and welcome to today's T&D World web chat titled Visualizing the Future, the Importance of Visual Data Management for Utilities, sponsored by Cyberhawk. I'm Nikki Chandler, Editorial Director for T&D World with Endeavor Business Media. To begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if you have any technical difficulties during the session, please submit that to the questions window, and our technical experts are here to help you out. We do recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. Additionally, we do welcome your questions during the event today. We'll answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow our main discussion, but please feel free to send in your questions at any time. To do so, same thing, just simply type your questions into that question window on the side of your screen and hit submit. Also, please be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the T&D World website within the next 24 hours. You'll be notified by email when that archive is available. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for the discussion today. Jay Jenkins has spent his 20-year career primarily in enterprise software product management leadership roles, with a focus on utilities and asset-intensive industries. He is currently the Vice President of Solutions Management at Cyberhawk. Welcome, Jay. Let's just start out with finding out what is visual data management and why is that important to utilities? And why is that important today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Well, look, put simply, visual data management is an emerging need in the enterprise software landscape for utilities. And it encompasses the systematic collection, organization, and presentation of visual data of many types. Together with the business processes that are specific to imagery, such as image-based inspections. And the goal of visual data management is to drive maximum value out of visual data across the enterprise. It's really important for utilities and really important today because it is something that's crucial for supporting UAS inspection programs or drone inspections or other remote sensing image capture programs.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of big data, and we've been dealing with that for many years, and I just never think of it as visual. So this is kind of, I mean, this sounds like it's definitely more important now. So let's just move on to the key challenges in visual data management for utilities. Could you elaborate a bit more on those main challenges that drive that need for visual data management solutions in utilities?
Yeah, sure. So I break it down into three main challenges that utilities face that really drive that need for VDM. And that's organization of data, proper tools for performing inspections on imagery or interacting and working with imagery, and then that overall end coordination. So starting with the organization of data, this is one of those that's fairly easy to underestimate. Honestly, until I joined Cyberhawk, I wouldn't have taken it as to be such a serious challenge as it really is. I tended to think, it's mainly putting files in folders. How hard is that going to be? But then thinking, I take a lot of pictures and videos with my phone. I can never find anything. And then, you have family, friend group threads and photos and videos are coming in from different places that are from different devices. And you see how it can get complicated quickly at a small level, and then you imagine that at the enterprise level. So we know we encountered and talked to multiple utilities that are pursuing their UAS inspection programs, but they've been stopped. They simply have to stop taking pictures altogether because it was just generating an unorganized mess. And so that's the organization piece. Then there's the inspection process, right? So from a software and tools perspective, inspecting an image requires some specific, unique capabilities. In a sense, the image becomes the asset. And so you can't sacrifice the kind of agility of being at the face of the asset and being able to look around. You put yourself in the shoes of a inspection engineer or a lineman. if they are changing from being right there and working directly at the face of the asset to something where they're saving off images with suffixes into new folders, that's going to, grow tired of that. They'll grow tired of that pretty quickly. And so that impact of that challenge is that adopting image-based inspections may feel like, maybe taking one step forward, collecting all these great images, but two steps back, because now your inspection process is now, limited compared to what it was before. And then finally, there's kind of that end-to-end coordination. So I tend to think of the, splitting of these jobs, right? We're now, with remote sensing in general, you're starting to kind of separate out aspects and kind of supercharging them, separating out the visualization piece and putting a lot more expertise on that from the actual inspection process. And so in a way, that's kind of like going maybe from like 1-on-1 or 3-on-3 basketball to 5-on-5. You're creating new positions. There's a greater opportunity for specialization in these positions, but you have to really adapt the team strategy to support that. If your shot sheet or your image capture plan is not aligned to what your inspectors want to do, there's going to be problems, right? If the equipment is not right, it's not the right tool for the job to capture the images that you need, you're going to have a suboptimal overall program. And, again, also if the inspection process that's, at least the inspection process that's image-based, if that's out of sync with the company's overall asset management strategy, that's going to hinder progress on adoption and being able to take full advantage. So that becomes even more critical when you have multiple organizations, contracting organizations contributing into an inspection program. So yeah, main challenge, let's say data organization, image-based inspections, and the end-to-end coordination would be the main challenges that are driving the need.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And those are some great analogies. I probably could use some visual data management myself. So what are some of the ways that VDM solutions do help overcome some of these challenges?
Mm-hmm. Right. So if we just start with the challenges, right? So starting with data organization, it's tempting to think of the solution for that being fairly simple, but it's really not. From planning to data collection to analysis, visual data management solutions provide a systematic method of sorting images, tying them to the right asset, and making them available within the organization to others in the company. This starts with planning and thinking through, starting with the remote sensing equipment itself, such as the drone controller. So visual data management extends all the way into the sensing equipment. And from the time that you're capturing these images, there needs to be a clear sort of chain of where the images are going and kind of how they're being sorted. You want that to be automated as much as possible, and VDMs have that automation capability, but they also need to be providing tools to validate any sort of borderline sorting results, right? That's very important because it's not going to be perfect. Automation is not going to catch everything, but you want to have some very clear tools to be able to, check things and validate the sorting that's applied. So that's a big thing that, Cyberhawk's focused on, is how quickly to turn around, because it's really important to be able to turn around that data captured in the field very quickly, because that in turn is affecting your overall speed to making a decision. And so that's on the data organization. On the inspection process, I mentioned, remote sensing is kind of, it's kind of like splitting parts of the job and driving specialization. But you must be careful not to take only some parts of a given work element. So, you can split the, looking at it in person and kind of split that away, and then, use, drone technology and high quality image capture, put it on steroids. But then the actual doing the inspection part needs a well-rounded set of tools so the inspectors don't feel like they've taken a step backwards. And this is what VDM does, right? So it's, organizing the information in the best way to make it as efficient as possible to perform that inspection, to give you the tools to, perform annotations. And, further visual data management solutions are where you can enable the use of artificial intelligence, computer vision and machine learning to automate things like identifying specific components or identifying defects on assets, which is, again, all about empowering the inspector more, right? So this is also should be seen as something that's going to be a tool to empower inspectors to make them more efficient, more productive, and be able to do their jobs better. And then from an end-to-end perspective, where VDM, I think how they help to overcome is that there's they really are, visual data management is also needs to be supporting that handoff of visual information between stakeholders, from the time it's captured in the field to time that is uploaded and available for inspection. There needs to be, those collaboration tools to be able to have conversations over inspections or to be able to annotate and to make comments like any modern software application. And there's also kind of a, of course, like with any enterprise software capabilities, reporting capabilities to be able to highlight, where there might be inefficiencies in that end-to-end and how you can continue to improve that, which is all about, improving that speed to decision. So in summary, visual data management provides automation with proper tools to validate data organization. It's a robust user experience to empower the inspector while inspecting images on a monitor rather than at the asset. And productivity functions to harmonize that end-to-end coordination from data collection to decision.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds great, but there might be some barriers to adoption of it. So let's talk about how to understand and kind of demystify some of those barriers. What roadblocks do you see in the adoption of VDM, and how can you overcome those?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question because I think that, if I put myself in the shoes of a utility CIO or an IT manager or IT systems director or operations manager, anyone really, you tendency to think, well, this is yet another system to deal with, something else to learn, something else to integrate, something else to train my team on. I think we all sympathize with that, right? But I think the way to overcome that is really the same with anything. I think the more that visual data management is understood, it becomes part of the conversation. More people understand it, the more they can kind of influence and shape and understand what it means to their organization. It's gonna change the perspective on it. So if I'm thinking to that utility CIO or IT manager, one of the biggest things I want them to take on is that visual data management is not just a tool for a pain reliever, right? It's not just there to be able to help you take that next step in your UAS program. It is. I mean, and that's a great reason, right? That's a great justification, but it's also a game creator in many other ways. And I'd say that comes down to two main things about visual data management. One is its unfair advantage in intuitiveness, and then second is its variety of use cases. So first, what I mean when I say that unfair advantage, visual data management systems have an unfair advantage on other enterprise solutions just due to its inherent visual nature, right? It's, if we think of one of the reasons why, GIS is such an intuitive and great solution and critical system, it's on a map, it's organized spatially, right? The cognitive load is reduced. In imagery, there's a massive amount of cognitive load just wiped away from the start because you're looking at imagery, you're looking at a picture. And so why does that matter? Well, I think most of us probably agree that, the enterprise software landscape in utilities, it gets the job done, but it can kind of take its toll on people switching from system to system. And sometimes it can be, switching context very fast, a bit tricky. So to that point of, geez, there's another system to deal with, another system to learn. I think of, visual data management has that advantage. It can be almost like a oasis, in a desert of kind of easy, uneasy to use applications. It's quite easy, very intuitive to use due to the data type. Beyond that, visual data management is not just about addressing that problem at hand that I mentioned, right? There's so many adjacent use cases that on their own that you likely may not be able to justify a business case to adopt a whole new system for it, but the value is huge when you bring these together. So like, together with that intuitiveness of the solution, this means that the spread of the use of the tool can be quite organic, which can be kind of rare in enterprise software. People being able to walk past a computer, see a solution and really wanting access to be able to get value out of that without having to, go through training. It's for example, we have customers of ours that are, we learn about it later that they're starting to use the visual data collected by inspections. It's targeted at inspection, wildfire mitigation, but they can do their desktop planning exercises for vegetation management and save trips to the asset because it's a lot of work, a lot of things they can understand just by looking at that imagery. So there's that kind of not just improving efficiency, improving safety in these other cases that are these kind of side use cases, but have a lot of value in and of themselves. So there are those typical roadblocks. I see the bigger picture of visual data management is not solely filling a gap for drone inspections. It is, but it does have that unfair advantage of the visual data together with its variety of use cases. And that means it's not just something that's an emerging requirement, it's something we have to do, but it's something that's a huge opportunity for utilities.
Yeah, so how does the visual data management then fit into the rest of that IT landscape for utilities?
Yeah, sure. So this is this is a big question. It comes with well-placed concern regarding, typical things, systems integration, how does it talk to other systems? Insofar as that integration, the good news is that, the integration patterns are relatively lightweight. And for the most part, they're established usually. By lightweight, I mean there's not much data required to make a visual data management solution thrive and work really well in utility inspections. We're talking locations from the GIS and asset information, nameplates, or work orders from the EAM. Those are the primary connections. And when I say that the patterns are for the most part established, I mean that these integrations are very similar to how an EAM would interact with like a field service management application, and really kind of how GIS interacts with many other systems in terms of being the source of the location data. So
yeah, so that does make sense. All right. So is there any overlap then with what other systems are already doing?
Yeah, so that's so it's kind of in the same vein of the previous question. I think this is one to look at of like, how does it fit within the IT landscape? And then is there, is this not something that should be tasked with some other system or something that's that's already there within utilities? And so, regarding overlap, I think at the end of the day, we're talking about asset data and inspection processes. So in a sense, this is a variation of jobs that are typically performed by your enterprise asset management or field service management solutions. But as I've mentioned before, this is a new paradigm, really, like the way that we're able to, the quality, the resolution, the information we can now capture in terms of visual data. It demands a specific set of software capabilities. I'd compare it with the emergence of asset performance management solutions. There's always been that temptation to question: is this, is asset performance management, is it just condition monitoring? Is that not just part of the EAM? Not just use the EAM to do these things. But I think as we've seen, there's so much specialization in APM that it's totally warranted to have purpose-built tools focused on solving that problem to be able to generate the most amount of value. And so I'd say the same applies to visual data management. You may be able to solve parts of this problem with some existing solutions, but you can really only maximize it with focused visual data management solutions. So there's some overlap, but I think it's very specialized, and it sort of demands its own approach and own strategy and unique set of capabilities.
Yeah, I see that. So let's cover then what advice that you might have for utilities in doing that evaluation and adopting visual data management solutions.
Right, sure. So
what should a customer be looking for in a VDM solution?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is kind of the same aspects that you want to look at with any solution, right? Easy to use and functional, flexible, but broad, and discoverable and open. That last one's kind of unique to visual data management. I'll explain what I mean in just a minute. But first, easy to use and functional. Look, everyone's loaded. They want to be able to have minimal amount of training. All right. So, minimal amount of training, but it also needs to be fit for purpose, right? It needs to support what you're doing. So those are quite obvious, but you're flexible and broad. I'd say, visual data management solution needs to be able to align with your business processes. So that's, it needs to align to like your existing inspection standards. integrate within your approach. So it's empowering your existing asset management strategy, but it also needs to be capable of evolving with your organization, right? Because you always want to improve and keep, applying continuous improvements to your overall strategy. So you need to have it adaptable and flexible. When I say broad, I mean, this is one that's important too. I think you need to consider the potential expansion of use cases. And that could be, beyond just inspections, right? But looking at, empowering other departments, or, doing this sort of desktop analysis, or looking at multiple different image types. That's also very key. It may not just be photogrammetry, but also, 3D or, infrared, many other image types you need to consider. And as well as asset types. There's a lot of solutions can kind of be very specific and quite aimed at certain asset classes. You need to be mindful that you may expand beyond what you start with, and so you don't want to be limited in what you can expand to later in terms of asset types. So I think that's all the more reason to look for tools with kind of a focused strategy on the VDM space, because it's a growing space, and the use cases continue to expand. And then finally, I mentioned discoverable and open. The imagery within utility organization is a huge asset itself. There's a lot of value can be driven out of that. So all of these, extra values I mentioned, it's intuitive and it's something that has a lot of variety of use cases, and others can take advantage of it. It needs to be easy to find information in your VDM from within your organization. That's a property of the software itself, but it's also something you need to consider in your sort of barriers or anything you set up from a commercial standpoint or a licensing standpoint, right? You don't want to have roadblocks of people being able to access this excellent trove of data. So yeah, easy to use and functional, flexible, broad in terms of its supportive use cases, and open and discoverable.
Okay, great. So I do have one more question before we jump into the audience questions here, but how should utilities learn more and or get started?
Right. Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think with this, seeing is believing, and with nascent technology and stuff that's emerging, small scale proof of value projects can be very effective in getting a better understanding, a rounded understanding, educating internal stakeholders on the potential value of solutions like visual data management. To that end, Cyberhawk offers a proof of value proof of value program that includes a bit of advisory services, kind of on the basics of defining, and setting up a UAS program, defining a shot sheet, selecting equipment, a small data capture exercise on your assets, and a trial of a VDM. And that way you can use it, have hands-on experience with real data on your assets, really to kind of help develop your own plans for visual data management. So that would be my recommendation.
Oh, okay, great. So a few have already submitted questions, so we'll go ahead and get started on those in a little bit of time we have left. If anyone else has any more questions, go ahead and put them into the question box there and hit submit. So, okay, let's look at, we've got one here. So are these images reviewed via customer requirements, as you said? You had designed shot lists. Okay. I don't know if you can see that one. Are these images reviewed via customer requirements, as you said, as you had designed like a shot list, or do you deliver the data and then they become their own inspector to identify their own issues, then assign severity and add their own annotations?
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, I see it. I think no, it's not off topic. This is good. This is so okay, I think kind of the questions I understand is basically, do you you define a shot sheet or your data collection plan, are you does the data do you have the inspecting happen in-house? Or does the inspecting happen together with the data collection? And so I think that's really a matter of preference, right? I mean, this is something that, I'd say like, my organization, Cyberhawk, we have services where we do full end-to-end of data collection. I mentioned some of the advisory stuff that kind of helps set up your own, but, we also have many teams of pilots on staff. We do the big data collection. We also have engineers, asset experts that do perform inspections in case you're just looking for that report of what are the problems, where are the defects, what is the condition of the assets. But there's also cases we have customers where we're doing the data collection, we're pushing the data into our visual data management solution, iHawk, and the utility is performing the inspections on those images. So those can be split up kind of as a matter of preference from the customer side.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's another one. Is there an integration between UAV control and iHawk to streamline that flow of data?
Yes, so that's a good question. So the question really, like, from the controlling of the actual drone, of the UAV, is there an integration there? In fact, yes, we actually have onboard software that is part of iHawk that actually is on the controller itself. So yes, it's one of the things that's key to getting that fast turnaround of data that's collected in the field and ready for review and making decisions on it. So yeah, there's a that logic there starts of kind of visualizing where the assets are and making sure you're over the top of the right one, and it knows that the image is captured in that sort of part of the data collection exercise or stored and then associated with that asset to make it easier as it kind of goes through that that upload and processing process.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go to the next one here. We plan to use contractors to do our UAS inspections. Is VDM more for them to use? And would we still need a VDM solution?
Yes, I think this actually is somewhat similar, I think, to the first question, which is good. So the answer is yes and yes, right? So if you're contracting out this, the actual inspections, those contractors are likely to be using a VDM solution for that. I mean, this is Cyberhawk to develop iHawk, right? We have, like I said, we do data collection. We have our inspectors and asset engineers doing that work on contract basis as well. But from a customer standpoint, even if you are outsourced, contracting inspections, after those inspections, you still have that asset of all of the images captured, and that you have a lot of other value you can get out of that, right? So I'd say that yes, there's definitely a lot of value. What you'd want, you need some systematic way to be able to continue to refer back and kind of have the record and be able to work through those images for those other kind of side use cases I mentioned. Maybe desktop audits in your veg department, for example.
Okay. I think we got time for one more here. We have existing cloud storage for our images. Does VDM connect to that? And does VDM replicate cloud storage?
Yeah, sure. So pretty brief on this one. Can it connect to the cloud storage, existing cloud storage? Absolutely, right? I think the key question is whether or not it should replicate that. Do you want to continue to keep an existing system that you may have in place, an existing organization or a cloud storage facility that you're using already for general accessibility and other purposes? When you kind of need to look at that like you would when you're implementing any sort of enterprise system, right? You look at it and say, well, does this existing storage approach continue to have purpose on its own, or do we want to kind of reduce and simplify stuff similar to what you'd kind of look at, reducing spreadsheets or something out of, by implementing another system? So that is kind of a matter of preference. It can connect to it. Obviously, if you want to continue that, that's very much typical to connect to that and sort of bring the images in for the purpose of processing. It's, I would say over time, you're going to want to probably steer those image use cases into a formal VDM system, but it can connect in the meantime.
Okay, great. That makes sense. So I am afraid that we have run out of time. So any of those questions that we didn't have time to answer, we'll be getting back to you via email. That does conclude the discussion today. So on behalf of T&D World, I'd like to thank Jay for his discussion today, Cyberhawk for sponsoring the web chat, and of course, all of you for joining. Have a great rest of your day.